Alright, so as we all know, the two new strategies from crossover breakers, Ryzu and Banlist, are taking up most of top cut spots at events since their release. But we are far from a tier 0 format. I think this might actually be one of the healthiest formats we've had in a while, and I believe many different decks have a chance at competing with the best of them. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. We're gonna take a look at top 5 underdog decks for post-Banlist crossover breakers format. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like and share all of your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe there is a particular strategy that's gonna beat the top decks of the format? And if you would like to share that secret, feel free to do so in the comments. So starting off with the first deck, this might come as a bit of a surprise, but Goblin Bikers actually just got top 4 at a regional. So let's talk about that deck and what actually makes it good. So Goblin Bikers are a strategy that thrive because of Xyz monsters. So immediately when an XYZ deck is present in the format, people tend to try out Goblin Bikers because you benefit off of you playing an XYZ deck and your opponent doing so as well. Goblin Bikers get special summoned by detaching an Xyz material from a monster on the field, either as a quick effect or an ignition effect. And notice I said monster on the field, so you can also detach from your opponent's Xyz monsters, which are either Ryzus or anything else that the Ryzu deck is making, because most of their extra deck is going to be Xyz monsters. Now, this deck can also play Fiendsmith, and immediately when a strategy is able to include Fiendsmith, it just makes it a notch better. We've seen this with Kashtira Fiendsmith, with Ryzu Fiendsmith, with everything Fiendsmith recently. And I believe Goblin Bikers might be an actual viable choice because so many players are picking up Ryzus. Now, granted, of course, it's still a bit of a roguish deck. And also, right now, Ryzus are playing Fiendsmith as well, which just makes them much more annoying because they can grind very well. And if you take away from their Xyz portion of the deck, they can just, switch to Fiendsmith and not really be bothered by it. Something that Goblin Bikers have going for it though is the fact that you can play them as a Pio deck, as you can see by the deck list on the screen. And if you go for that, you can actually fit about 20 non-engine, which is a lot. And of course, since you have space, you're including your Goblin Bikers, your Extenders, and your Fiendsmith. And the Fiendsmiths are great at two things: grinding and playing through hand traps. And your deck being a little bit more fragile, it's also good that you have something to fall back on. So I wouldn't say Goblin Bikers are cope. I genuinely think it's not a bad choice for like a regional or something if you encounter a lot of Fiendsmith, Ryzu, and actually find this matchup to be good. So there's something to think about. Moving on to number 2 on this list, it's actually going to be Yubel. Now, I swear I didn't include it just because I like the deck, and I do think it's still considered, or should be considered, a meta deck. I think Yubel is still very strong, and I would say a lot of Yubel players are going to agree with me. What we lost is 2 Phantoms, but we gained 2 openings. An opening is just a great starter, a good extender. It's everything. It adds back your pain if they ogre it, which is incredible, and ogre is seeing much more play right now. But that's not the only thing. Yubel, when going first and playing through disruption, which, keep in mind, right now people are playing less hand traps than in the last format because you don't need as many hand traps against Ryzu. So about 15 to 16 non-engine should in theory be enough, because Ryzu kind of gets beaten with a board breaker or 2 and strong engine. And keep that in mind for another deck on this list. But let's circle back to Yubel. With people playing less hand traps, it's going to make it easier for you to play through them, because before you had 3 Phantoms and you could afford to negate a hand trap, make another Phantom, and just not really care about it. Maybe go through this 3rd one and use it as a body. But right now, you have to be much more mindful of your Phantoms and shuffling them back. And what you're going to end up experiencing is you're just going to build a worse board because you can't as effectively go for the broken 2-card combo boards anymore. However, I would say a lot of times when I played Yubel, I didn't actually have to use all of my interruptions for my opponents to scoop. And yeah, mostly that was because they knew I still have other interrupts coming and they just refused to, experience that. They would just rather scoop and go to game 2. But my point being, sometimes when you make a worse board, which would be like one Fiendsmith Engraver combo or something like that, your board is still good enough for your opponent to not be able to play. And a lot of times you wouldn't even end on a Varudras because you would be fiend locked. And those kinds of boards are still achievable right now with 1-card combos without the second and third phantom. So in my opinion, Yubel is definitely viable and it just has enough space to play the non-engine that you need. And again, going first, it is actually broken, like it's always been. You're just gonna have to play a little more skillfully, I would say. Let's move on to the third deck for today, which is going to be Labyrinth. I like Labyrinth a lot because it just has such a different playstyle from everything. Like, Labyrinth doesn't care about the charmies, about shifter. It sometimes doesn't even care about going first or second because you're setting everything anyway. And that's not the main point, of course. You do want to win that die roll. But I think Labyrinth is just very, very solid because of the aforementioned reasons. And also it has a searchable D barrier, which is really important right now. And you can also search something like a Karma Cannon or whatever you need in that situation. Something else, and that is probably the most important aspect of Labyrinth right now, is the fact that its grind game is really, really good. And what you want right now is a grindy deck for it to be able to go toe-to-toe with Raizu Fiendsmith. And also Kashtira Fiendsmith and everything else, or just the pure light Fiend deck that people are still running. You want to have a deck with good follow-up and good grind game, and Labyrinth has all of that. So I would say Labyrinth is a very, very solid choice right now. Moving on to number 4 on today's list, it is going to be Memento. Now, I just mentioned that Raizu can be beaten with board breakers and good engine, in my opinion. And I think Memento is one of the best decks at having very, very solid engine right now. It has plenty extenders, therefore it has great ability at playing through hand traps or any kind of interruption. And because it doesn't necessarily inherently have space to play many hand traps, you could comfortably fit about 15 from what I've seen. I think it's a really good choice for a board breaking approach or a mixture of both. I've seen Ultimate Slayer being cited, for example, at YCS Anaheim, and that's what I'm talking about when I say pairing board breakers and a very solid engine. People don't really know how to play against it. They might interrupt it in the wrong spot, and if you have an extender, you're just winning. It is going to be super easy for you to achieve that. And I genuinely believe Memento is a really, really good choice because similarly to Yubel, it is a broken combo deck when going first and going uninterrupted or playing through hand traps, because a lot of times you will encounter decks that in theory could make like a gazillion negates, with 3-card combos if you don't ash them. But then you have decks like Yubel and Memento that actually can eat hand traps and still play. And that's what makes them very, very solid combo decks. So in my opinion, I would say Memento is a really cool choice. And it's like a deck like this is not getting hit on the list or anything like that. It's just a deck that you can really grind a lot, and I think it's got a lot of skill expression, and you're just gonna get better and better and pretty much become like the unbeatable Memento player. So that's something. Now, moving on to number 5. Before we jump into that, I would like to ask you what you think the number 5 deck should be. If there is a particular choice you have or something that you're actually going to be running, feel free to drop the idea in the comments down below. But now let's get to number 5, which is going to be Voiceless Voice. Now, a lot of times people will say Voiceless is not a great deck. I was among those people. I don't really believe in Voiceless Voice that much, or at least I'm going to reword this. I haven't believed in it up until this point. I just didn't really see the appeal of the deck. I thought it was very fragile. But right now, I think the main thing that it has going for it is the fact that its grind game is pretty much amazing. Like, you are able to go toe-to-toe with Kashtira Fiendsmith, or again, any kind of light fiend deck, and have a better matchup into that than them into you. You have just an amazing grind game. You don't get hurt by the Charmy cards as much. And Shifter, for that matter, like, sure, it turns off your Saphira and some of those things, but for the most part, you shouldn't really care that much. You also can play it with Raizu, like OCG has been doing, and you just utilize your Voiceless Voice side of things for the negate and then go into your Raizu alliance, which I think is really neat. Overall, in my opinion, Voiceless is a good choice. With all the support cards they've received and like everything the deck has going for it, I would say it's very solid. It just wasn't able to really hold its own against the overpowered decks of the last couple of formats. But right now, with the meta kind of, I guess, slowing down, or how to put it, and with games actually lasting until turn 4 or 5 or 6, that's when Voiceless Voice is actually able to shine. And I do believe in this deck right now. So that is going to be it. Please let me know your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this video, of course, make sure to give it a like. And again, please let me know what you're going to be playing in the next format. I would love to know. And if you're going to be playing meta, that's also fine. I guess just keep in mind that these couple of underdog decks can maybe catch you off guard. So with that, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.